Hello everybody, my name is Brady and we are back with another React video, and today we're going to be checking out more extra history. We're starting their series on Admiral Yi, which I'm very excited about. We took a little detour and did some Otto von Bismarck, but now we're getting back to Eastern history. You guys told me that this relates kind of to the Sengoku Jidai series. I don't know to what extent, but it should be really cool because I really enjoyed that series. What do I know about Admiral Yi? I've heard his name. I know he's like a Navy guy, but that's about all I can really say there. I don't think I have any background going into this stuff. I know very little about Eastern history, but I think Korea I might know the least about when it comes to any of its history prior to the Kim dynasty. And even with that stuff, it's sometimes hard to get good information around. That was a really cool intro. They never do that, or at least I don't think so. I've only seen a few of their series, but as far as an intro goes, they did that without any words. That's actually really cool. It's a nice storytelling point. It's planting that little seed. This is gonna happen. You have no idea what the significance of this is, but this is what we're building up to, which is cool. It gives me something to look forward to? Question mark? I don't know.
The year is 1572, 26 years earlier. A 28-year-old man rides across an open plain. A group of military men stand quietly, observing. His horse stumbles. He's thrown. At first, everybody watching thinks he's dead. His leg is horribly bent, broken. But after a moment, he gets up, dragging one leg behind him, and pulls himself to a willow tree. He binds his leg with its branches, remounts his horse, and finishes the military examination. He fails the exam anyway, but 4 years later he'll be back. He'll pass, and so will begin the career of one of the most glorious admirals of all time.
What an absolute Chad. I've seen examples of things like this where you look into somebody's biography, somebody who became great, and you'll still see some of their early failures, and it's kind of surprising, and you look at the people who failed them, and it's like, oh, they really didn't know what they had. But that stuff happens all the time. I even see in more mundane situations. I know a guy who was like a really good athlete. He was trying out for the high school team, and he ends up getting injured really early on. But this guy could have blown anybody out of the water. When it came down to it, he just got injured at the wrong time. And like, that's the sort of thing. Sometimes it's just luck that will show up in the early awkward stages of your biography.
It's strange that this man even decided to join the military. Korea had known 200 years of relative peace, threatened only by the occasional raids from the Jurchen tribes on the northern border and pirate crews plying the nearby sea. The military was not a highly respected career choice for a man of noble birth. Taking the civil service exams and joining the ranks of the Confucian court was a much better way to achieve power and success. And yet,
so he was of noble birth. That is an important detail. I find that interesting. Maybe it's a case where it is a valid way to go, but people would have preferred to go the other way. I've seen cases in European history where young, ambitious men have so much potential in kind of the more mundane jobs and stuff like that, where they can rise through the ranks or whatever, but they're deciding, hey, no, I want to be a soldier. I want to lead a charge or something. So I've seen examples of that, but it is kind of surprising that it is something that would be perhaps looked down upon for somebody in noble birth, especially during a relatively peaceful time. It's not like they'd be risking nearly as much.
Yet this man, Yi Sun-shin, though he was schooled in the Confucian texts, had dreamed of being a soldier since he was a little boy. And so, at last, when he had passed the military exam, he was appointed to a desolate fort along the northern border. While most of the border forts were pits of corruption, seen simply as a place to dump individuals who had fallen out of favor with the court, Yi drilled his men rigorously and refortified his post, bringing it up to true readiness in case of an attack.
The cool thing about being a noble, you get to jump right into an officer position. He's already drilling people. You don't really have to start from the bottom. It is good to be to win the birth lottery, I guess. I love that example where like you send people to the place to get rid of them, because we've seen that, and we talked about it a little bit in the Otto von Bismarck series in Europe and later on in America. If you don't like somebody, send them on a diplomatic trip to Russia and you'll never have to see them again. Except when you do, when their diplomatic trip ends up working out very well and they become a pain in your butt later. I'm not talking about anybody too specific. James Buchanan.
One day, the provincial governor came by to inspect the post. This was a man all of the fort commanders dreaded, known for his harsh punishments and brutal discipline. But when he came to Yi, he simply said, well done, and moved on. Shortly thereafter, Yi was moved back to Seoul, a sign of growing favor, and he was given a post at the military academy there, training new recruits. He was by all accounts rigorous, diligent, and incorruptible. And this was exactly the problem. At this time, the military academy was actually a tool for younger noble sons to jump up the ranks quickly, and for courtiers to channel their favorite people into the cushiest assignments. And
okay, so there is some nobility trying to take a similar route to him, so it's not like unheard of or something. I wasn't sure to what extent what he was doing was really exceptional. I guess it would probably depend on what kind of noble you are. I'd imagine there's got to be like different ranks and stuff, and some more likely. Like he's kind of like more, if he was more higher end, maybe doing the military would be a step down, and maybe he would have been better served in a different sort of position. But I don't know what their nobility like ranking is, so it's hard to say.
And Yi was not cooperating. So, after a short stay in Seoul, he was booted back to a provincial assignment. By July, though, he had secured a position running a naval garrison and was rapidly rising up the ranks again. But here, too, he was schemed against by corrupt officials. Many attempts were made to have Yi removed, but each one he parried expertly until, one day, one of his previous superiors from the military academy, one who Yi had rebuked for corruption, was called to his province to do an inspection. Seeing an opportunity for revenge, the inspector wrote a report castigating Yi, saying he was...
Nobody likes a snitch, Yi. This is what happens, man. You gotta be you're gonna be a snitch, and it's gonna come back to you. But honestly, I really like the guy. He seems like he's relatively noble. I feel like I wouldn't want him to be my boss, though. He seems like he'd be really up your ass about things, but I don't know.
He was completely negligent. When the report got to Seoul, Yi found himself dismissed from the military entirely. 4 months later, though, he was vindicated. Found innocent of the charges against him, he was returned to service, but demoted to the lowest possible officer grade. He might have languished.
So just like the stank of being accused might have hurt his reputation, that's like not fair, man. If somebody's accused, you be sympathetic neutral. Don't assume that they're innocent. Don't assume that they're guilty. Just sympathetic neutral. I think that's a fair place to be. Then Yi ends up getting crap for that. No, that's not even fair, man.
At this menial post, but at last his diligence was finally rewarded when he was brought back to meaningful duty by none other than one of his former rivals. One of the fleet commanders who Yi had served under while maintaining the naval garrison had been transferred to the northern frontier, and knowing that he'd need good, capable officers, he requested Yi be sent with him. Soon, though, it became clear that Yi was needed to garrison a fort on the Tumen River, which was one of the demarcation lines between Jurchen and Korean territory. Jurchen raiders roamed far south of the Korean border, looting and pillaging at will. Raids had nearly overrun the nearby frontier province. And so, Yi took up the post. He drilled his troops until they were in top shape, and knowing that simply shoring up...
I love all these little drill things. He had like the the jackhammer, and now he's got like the hand drill. Sorry, it's just funny. They're making many different uses of that.
If the defenses wouldn't be enough, he laid his troops out for an ambush and then lured the raiders into Korean territory. He fell on them with a ferocity and a swiftness they had never seen in Korea. Within hours, the tribes were smashed and their power shattered. They would never again be such a threat to the province. But here, too, Yi was stymied by a jealous superior, and while the court was jubilant about his success, the official record reads, although the court recognized Yi Sun-shin's meritorious service to the king, it nevertheless decided against awarding him a prize. Shortly after this, Yi's father died, and being deeply rooted in Confucian ideals, Yi retired home for 3 years in accordance with the traditional mourning period. When he at last...
Like, not knowing anything about Confucian ideals, Eastern philosophy seems very interesting stuff, but not knowing anything, I'm glad he spelled that out for me, because that's one of those things, not having that foundation, not understanding that the values people are brought up in, it makes it so hard to relate to them, and you gotta kind of like build from the ground up to really appreciate it. That's why it's so hard for me personally to learn about a new place. It takes a whole lot. Like this video, this series, it will not be enough for me to appreciate this stuff. It's merely an introduction.
Returned to service, he was put in charge of transportation for the court, but a mere 16 days later, it was decided that Yi was needed too badly at the border, and once again, he was sent north. He was to man a small island fortress. Undermanned, crumbling, beyond disrepair, he once again drilled its garrison, shored up its defenses, and week after week sent out a request to the district commander for reinforcements. Then, one morning, as the mists rolled in and most of the men were out harvesting rice because the military was in such a state that men on the border had to harvest their own food, the Jurchen attacked, pouring out of the mist on horseback. Yi Sun-shin only had a dozen men to defend with. He and his handful of soldiers fought desperately, cutting their way to one group of captives and escaping with 50 people the Jurchen would have taken prisoner. But by this time, you know the story. In order to avoid blame, Yi's superior, a man named Yi-il, blamed the entire defeat on Yi Sun-shin. He had...
So this... Let me go back a second. This feels like this whole episode has kind of felt like a bit of a loop, and I'm not saying that as in it's a bad thing. That just seems to be how this guy's early career worked out. It's just like you make progress, you're really good, you get screwed over, you get set back, then you come back up, and then you get moved to another place, and then repeat. That seems to be the theme here. It's moving very fast. The pacing of this one in particular is pretty fast compared to the other ones I've seen. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think the process of building the foundation can be difficult. And it means we get probably more attention paid to some of the later stuff, so I'm down with that. One thing I do like is that we actually have a name for this guy. Having a bunch of faceless people screwing him over again and again and again makes it hard for me to care that those people are screwing him over. The fact that this guy has a name actually gives me some indication that he's important enough, that he might come back into play later, and that this betrayal actually means something.
Superior, a man named Yi-il, blamed the entire defeat on Yi Sun-shin. He had him brought back to the capital, tortured, and put on trial in an attempt to have him condemned so that Yi-il could avoid any of the blame. But Yi Sun-shin did not crack under torture, and when it came time to take the stand, he said this to Yi-il: "My lord, you are asking me to assume the whole responsibility for the misfortune. But you are wrong. May I remind you that you have always refused my frequent request for reinforcement. The defeat was not a result of my negligence of duty, but in large part, your fault. Therefore, it is not I, but you, who should be held responsible for the defeat." The court was stunned. Many of them knew of Yi's record and were inclined to believe him, so in the end, he was allowed to live, but he was stripped of his rank, again, and returned to the army as a common enlisted man, starting over at the very bottom, as if he...
I mean, to be fair, that's probably where he should have been from the beginning. I'm sure with his exceptional skills, he would have rose up rather quickly, because he does seem like he has like an incredibly strong work ethic. But we have this again. If they were just sympathetic neutral and didn't demote him, didn't let that stank stick to him, he probably would be able to do so much more for them so much earlier. Clearly he's going to make some great contributions. I am a little bit skeptical of this whole thing, because I've talked in the past about the perspectives of extra history. What they do, it doesn't seem like they do a lot that's wrong, but they do really focus on a particular person's perspective, and it's hard for me to tell how much I really like Yi as a person, because he's being portrayed in a very sympathetic light, and I don't know if there is an alternative way of viewing it. So I'm taking this for what it's worth, but I'm also a little bit, okay, is he that great? Were there any actual concerns around him that might have been a problem? Because honestly, he seems like a bit of a Boy Scout so far. It's almost hard to believe.
He'd never taken the military examinations. He was once again placed on the northern border and asked to fight the invading tribes, and once again he did so with distinction, until finally in 1588 he asked that he be allowed to retire. But storm clouds were gathering over Korea, and some, especially his longtime friend, a man named Ryu Sung-young, recognized that soon the country would have need of good military men. While Yi had struggled through his career in the military, Ryu, his childhood compatriot, who had been his companion in games of war, had risen to be Prime Minister of Korea. It was actually through Ryu's influence, and because of his subtle aid, that Yi had time and again survived the machinations held against him. Now, Ryu planned to see that Yi would take his rightful place for the war he feared was coming. On the next episode of Extra History, remember how in the Sengoku Jidai episodes we talked about that messy Japanese invasion of Korea? Well, that's about to happen.
Yeah.
Join us as Yi and Ryu take on the Japanese forces, as we delve into the differences in government, technology, and arms between these two nations, and as we explore the first few disastrous weeks of this war.
The thing about it in the Sengoku Jidai series, it was pretty quick, the Korean invasion thing. Like, that seemed like it went by pretty fast. So I don't feel like I got, like, crazy detail in it. So I'm very excited to see this maybe a bit more in depth, because this seems like that's going to be where this guy really shines. Like, he's like this naval hero or something, so I'd imagine we're going to be spending a lot of time on this particular invasion. I didn't check to see how many episodes are in this one, but I'm going to try to crank them out pretty quickly. So, like I did with the Otto von Bismarck one, but we'll see. Schedules are complicated and stuff, but I'll try. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know which one you'll want me to do after this one, and yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow with another video. All right.